When you're going through that like process, which is kind of iterative process over time of like, okay, we're going from kind of very low level B2C kind of to kind of mid level, probably trying to monetize those customers in some way, to then enterprise deals. I imagine you have this kind of, sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of at one point had this sort of like disparate, like reasonably disparate set of like actually paying customers and revenue. How do you even think about that, and how do you think about sort of how do you think about how you decide which customers you're okay to kind of say goodbye to, and how do you make those decisions of offboarding customers, or do you just leave it and revenue is revenue?
Yeah. So this was part of this was part of what I prioritized when I took over as CEO, because I feel like the word strategy gets bandied around a lot, and it was so much so that like I kind of lulled myself into this false sense that like, oh yeah, I know what strategy is. We have a strategy, and actually like the more you start to dig into it and really understand what strategy means and that there's like a way to go about it, you realize that very few people actually do it well. And I'm not saying that I think we did it well, but it kind of gets to the answer of your question, which was which customers are you okay saying goodbye to. The only way you can do that is by really understanding the economics around those customers. And so, we had, to kind of, illustrate this point, we had the very smallest clients would be paying us kind of like, 5,000 ACV a year type contracts, all the way up to like mid six-figure ACV type contracts. So there really is a huge range there. When we did a strategy exercise with a guy who had 25 years, mainly in doing strategy for telco and SaaS. He was an ex-Cambridge math and stats guy. And his approach was basically, give me all your data, and I will tell you which clients are profitable and which ones aren't. And so we went through this exercise, and he kind of mapped out all of the different client segments we were selling into, gave us a like drains up view of this is how much it costs you to acquire, this is how much you're retaining, upselling, everything, right? And it was, it got ridiculous to the point where I had people in the management team going like, this guy James just asked me how big my desk is, like to know how much space I'm taking up in the office. Like, I think he's on the wrong track here. And I was like, just stay with it. Like there's a process here. We're getting through it. Like, and sure enough, he came through the other end, like 120 slides on like forensically like evaluating which customers were worth hanging on to and which ones weren't. And there were some real surprises there. So he, once we kind of reaffirmed that yes, the bigger clients are great for us, right? And he's like, you can afford to spend a little bit longer selling to them, but this is the minimum that you need to sell at in order for this to be profitable and make sense. The surprise was that actually we were able to acquire customers at the very small end of the spectrum profitably, even though you typically see high churn in the SMB segment and their low average order values and everything else, right? So we were still able to acquire those and retain them profitably. And so it sort of drove us to this strategy and executing, which had a combination of kind of demand gen, which was mainly inbound point solution sales on the low end, and then more of a strategic enterprise approach at the top end. And so then you have to think about, okay, well, how do we reshape the go-to-market function to basically execute against those two very different client needs, right? If we're kind of selling into the market.
Does that